shoreline of faith.
Isaiah 41:10. What it really means for your life. What if the thing you are most afraid of right now is actually the doorway to the deepest encounter with God you have ever had? I want you to stop for a moment, not to breathe, not to relax. I want you to stop because what I am about to share with you has the power to completely change the way you face every hard thing in your life from this point forward. There is a verse in the Bible that billions of people have read. It is printed on refrigerator magnets, tattooed on wrists, shared in group chats at 2 in the morning when someone is falling apart. And yet, most people who quote it have never truly understood what it means. Not really. Not at the level where it actually changes something inside you. Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10. 7 lines, 1 promise, and a weight behind those words that most teachers never take the time to unpack. Today, that changes. By the time this video is over, you will not just know this verse. You will feel it. You will carry it differently. And the fear that brought you here today, whatever it is, will no longer have the same grip on you that it had when you pressed play. Why fear is the language of our generation. Let me ask you something honest. When was the last time someone asked you how you were really doing, and you actually told the truth? We are living in a generation that is more connected than ever and more afraid than ever at the same time. Studies show that anxiety disorders now affect nearly 1 billion people worldwide. 1 billion. And that number does not count the people who are anxious, but have never been diagnosed, never talked to anyone, never admitted it even to themselves. And here is what makes it worse. The culture we live in has sold us a lie. It told us that control is a virtue, that the person who has it all together is the person worth admiring. So we learned to perform strength even when we were devastated on the inside. We learned to say, "I am fine," when what we really meant was, "I am barely holding on." And then, somewhere along the way, the church added another layer to that pressure. Someone told you that if you were afraid, it meant your faith was weak, that fear and trust in God could not exist in the same heart at the same time. So now you are not just afraid. You are afraid and ashamed of being afraid. I need you to hear this clearly. Fear is not the opposite of faith. Pretending you are fine is. God has never once asked you to perform peace you do not feel. And Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10 was not written for the strong. It was written for people exactly like you, in moments exactly like this one. But before we go deeper into what this verse means, we need to go back to the moment it was first spoken. Because when you understand who God was talking to and what they were going through, everything about this promise will hit you differently. God spoke this to a people who had already lost everything. Picture this: a nation that once had everything. A city with walls so thick that armies turned back at the sight of them. A temple so magnificent that travelers came from distant lands just to stand in its shadow. A people with an identity, a history, a covenant with the living God. And then, one by one, it all came apart. The walls fell. The temple burned. The king was taken. The priests were scattered. The children of Abraham, the people God had personally called his own, were now prisoners in a foreign land, surrounded by a culture that mocked everything they believed in and served gods made of wood and stone. This is the world Isaiah chapter 41 was written into. Not a world preparing for hardship, a world already inside it, already broken, already asking the question that you may be asking right now. Where is God in all of this? And it is exactly there, in the middle of the rubble, in the middle of the silence, in the middle of the thing that should never have happened, that God opens his mouth and says, "Fear not, for I am with you." Not before the storm, inside it. This is the detail that changes everything about how you read this promise. God did not show up to prevent the collapse. He showed up in the collapse. And that means that wherever you are right now, whatever has already fallen apart in your life, you are not in a place where God cannot reach you. You are in the exact kind of place where He has always chosen to speak. But who was the man that carried this message? Who was Isaiah? And why does it matter that he was the one God chose to write these words? The answer to that question will take this promise even deeper. The man behind the message. Most people read the book of Isaiah and never stop to think about the man who wrote it. And that is a mistake, because when you understand who Isaiah was, the words he wrote stop being ancient literature and start feeling like something personal. Isaiah prophesied for more than 60 years. 60 years. He walked through the reign of 4 different kings. He watched empires rise and shift and threaten the people he loved. He delivered messages of judgment and messages of hope, sometimes in the same breath, to a nation that was often too distracted or too proud to listen. And here's the part that moves me every time I think about it. Isaiah wrote promises he would never see fulfilled. He described a future he would never live to witness. He put words on a page for generations he would never meet, trusting that God would make sure those words arrived exactly where they needed to go. That means Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10 was written for you before you were born, before your name existed, before your fear had a name. God looked across thousands of years of human history and made sure this promise reached this moment in your life. Think about the faith that requires, not just from Isaiah, from God Himself, the God who speaks into the future with the same certainty He speaks into the present, because to Him there is no difference. That is the God behind this verse, and that is the God who is speaking directly to you right now. But knowing who spoke these words is only the beginning, because buried inside the original language of this verse are 3 words that most English translations can only approximate. And when you see what those words actually mean, this promise will never sound the same again. 3 words that carry the weight of heaven. Every translation of the Bible does its best, but every translation also leaves something behind. Not because the translators were careless, but because some words carry a weight that simply does not survive the journey from one language to another. And Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10 is full of those words. There are 3 of them in particular that I want you to see. 3 Hebrew words that God chose with precision and that most people walk right past without knowing what they missed. The first one is the word translated as I will strengthen you. In Hebrew, that word is chazak. And chazak does not mean receiving strength the way you receive a gift that is handed to you. Chazak is the word used when one person grabs the arm of another who is about to go under. It is the grip of someone who refuses to let you drown. God is not offering you a boost of energy. He is seizing you with both hands and holding you above the water whether you feel it or not. The second word is the one translated as I will help you. In Hebrew, that word is azar. And azar carries the image of surrounding something completely, not pushing you forward from behind, not pulling you along from the front, surrounding you on every side so that there is no angle from which something can reach you without first going through God. When He says He will help you, He means He will wrap Himself around you entirely. The third word is the one translated as I will uphold you. In Hebrew, that word is tamak. Tamak is the word used to describe the pillars that hold up an entire structure. You are not being carried the way someone carries a burden they are tired of holding. You are being upheld the way a foundation upholds a building. You are not dead weight in God's arms. You are a structure He has chosen to bear. Read that verse one more time with those 3 images in your mind. You are being seized so you cannot drown. You are being surrounded so nothing can reach you. You are being upheld like a building resting on an unshakable foundation. You are not being dragged through this season. You are being held up inside it. And yet there is something else in this verse that most people completely overlook. Something hidden not in the individual words, but in the order of the words themselves. Because God did not arrange this promise by accident. And when you see the sequence He chose, it will reveal something about how He thinks about you that will change the way you come to Him. Notice what God promises first and what He promises last. There is a sequence inside Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10 that most people never notice. And once you see it, you will realize that God structured this promise the way He did for a very specific reason. The verse begins with presence. I am with you. Not, I will fix this. Not, I will remove this. Not even, I will strengthen you. The very first thing God says is simply that He is there, with you, in the room, in the silence, in the wreckage, present. And the verse ends with action. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Movement, intervention, the hand of God actively at work in your situation. But notice what comes first and what comes last. Presence before action, being before doing, identity before intervention. God does not lead with what He is going to do for you. He leads with who He is to you. And that order is not accidental. It is intentional. It is theological. And it is deeply personal. Because what God is saying is this: before I do anything in your situation, I need you to know something about our relationship. I am not a resource you access in a crisis. I am not a tool you pick up when everything else has failed. I am your God, and I am already here. So many people spend their entire lives chasing the miracle and missing the presence. They want the hand of God to move before they have rested in the face of God. And what this verse is telling you is that the action you are desperate for flows out of the relationship you may have been neglecting. The miracle is not the main thing God is offering you in this verse. He is the main thing, and everything else He promises follows from that one foundational reality. Now I want to show you something that might surprise you. Something that connects the way your brain works to the way God speaks. Because what neuroscience has discovered about fear in the last 20 years lines up with what God said in Isaiah chapter 41 in a way that should take your breath away. What happens in your brain when God says, "Do not fear"? Here is something that nobody told you in Sunday school. When God says, "Fear not," He is not ignoring your biology. He is working with it. Your brain has a structure called the amygdala. It is small, about the size of an almond, and it has one primary job. It scans your environment constantly, looking for threats. And the moment it detects something it classifies as dangerous, it fires a signal that floods your body with stress hormones and does something remarkable. It shuts down access to your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thought, long-term perspective, and calm decision-making goes offline. This is what scientists call amygdala hijack. And when it happens, you are not able to think your way out of fear, because the part of your brain that thinks has been temporarily taken off the circuit. This is why telling someone who is terrified to simply calm down almost never works. The rational brain is not available to receive that instruction. But here is where this becomes extraordinary. Neuroscientists have discovered that the amygdala responds not just to what is real, but to what is vividly imagined or deeply believed. When you shift your focus to something your brain registers as more true, more present, and more powerful than the threat, the amygdala begins to settle. The stress hormones decrease. The prefrontal cortex comes back online. And your capacity to think, trust, and act from a place of groundedness is restored. That is exactly what God is doing when He says, "Fear not." He is not dismissing your fear. He is giving your mind a greater object of focus. He is saying, "Look here. Look at who I am. Look at what I have promised. Look at the hand that is holding you right now. And as you fix your attention on that reality, something shifts in you at a level that goes far deeper than willpower or positive thinking. Research on contemplative prayer and the repetition of scripture has shown measurable changes in brain activity. People who regularly meditate on promises from God show reduced activity in the fear centers of the brain over time. The neural pathways that default to anxiety become less dominant. New pathways associated with trust and peace grow stronger. This is what the Bible calls the renewing of your mind. And it turns out that science has only recently begun to describe what God designed from the beginning. Faith is not the denial of reality. Faith is the installation of a larger reality, one that your brain, when properly anchored, can actually begin to live from. And that larger reality has a name, not a concept, not a force, a name. And it is in the next layer of this verse that God makes it as personal as it can possibly get. Why God said, "I am your God," and not "I am a God." There is a single word in Isaiah chapter 41 verse 10 that most people read right past, a word so small in English that it barely registers. But in the original Hebrew, that word carries the weight of an entire covenant. The word is your. God does not say, "I am a God." He does not say, "I am the God." He says, "I am your God." And in Hebrew, that word is Elohecha, El, meaning God, and the suffix cha, meaning yours, belonging to you, assigned to you, personally and specifically yours. This is not the language of a creator addressing his creation from a distance. This is the language of a father speaking to his child. This is the language of a shepherd who knows every sheep by name. This is the language of someone who has made a decision about you and is now declaring it out loud, so there is no confusion. Think about what it means for something to be yours. When something belongs to you, you are responsible for it. You pay attention to it. You protect it. You do not let it go without a fight. And when God says, "I am your God," he is not just identifying himself. He is declaring his responsibility for you. He is saying, "You are mine, and I take that seriously." In the ancient world, when a king made a covenant with a people, he did not simply offer assistance. He bound himself to them. His resources became their resources. His protection became their protection. His name became their covering. And that is exactly the kind of language God is using here. He is not presenting himself as an option. He is presenting himself as the one who has already chosen you and already taken ownership of your situation. There is a difference between believing that God exists and knowing that God is yours. Millions of people believe in God the way they believe in gravity. They accept that he is real, that he operates in the world, that he is powerful. But they have never crossed the line into the intimacy of knowing that this God, the one who created everything, has personally claimed them. That is the line this verse is inviting you to cross right now. Not just to acknowledge that there is a God somewhere in the universe, but to receive the truth that he is your God. Here, now, in whatever you are walking through. And yet, I have to be honest with you about something, because there is a layer to this promise that most people find uncomfortable when they first hear it. A paradox buried inside this verse that turns everything you thought you knew about strength and faith completely upside down. You are weakest exactly when this promise becomes most powerful. Most people assume that a promise this powerful was written for someone who was holding it together. Someone with enough faith, enough history with God, enough spiritual maturity to receive it. But if you read just a few verses past Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10, you will find something that completely dismantles that assumption. In Isaiah chapter 41, verse 14, God addresses his people with a phrase that would have stopped anyone in that culture cold. He calls them Worm Jacob, not Warrior Jacob, not Chosen Jacob, Worm Jacob, the most diminutive, powerless, insignificant image a person could be compared to in the ancient Near East. something that lives in the dirt, something that can be crushed without effort, something that has no strength of its own to offer. And it is to that person, in that condition, that God delivers the most reinforced declaration of his commitment and power in the entire chapter. This is not an accident. This is theology. This is God making a point that he seems to want us to understand so badly that he embedded it in the very structure of the text. The promise does not go to the strong. It goes to the ones who have run out of strength entirely, the ones who are not performing faith anymore, the ones who are too tired to pretend, the ones who have finally stopped trying to be enough and have simply fallen. The Apostle Paul understood this. In 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9, he records the words God spoke directly to him in a moment of profound weakness. God said to him, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Not assisted by weakness, not tolerant of weakness, made perfect in it, completed in it, fully expressed through it. This means that the moment you feel least qualified to claim this promise is the moment this promise is most fully available to you. The moment you feel too broken, too far gone, too faithless, too small, is the exact moment God looks at you and says, "Good, now we can work. Now my strength has somewhere to go. Now there is nothing in the way." So stop waiting until you feel strong enough to believe this. Stop postponing your trust in God until you have cleaned yourself up enough to deserve it. The promise was never designed for the deserving. It was designed for the desperate. And if you are desperate right now, you are exactly where this promise wants you. But I need to tell you something else, something that might be the most honest thing said in this entire video. Because there is a version of this promise that gets preached constantly, and it sounds wonderful, but it is not actually what the verse says. And until you know the difference, you will keep being disappointed by a promise you misunderstood. The honest truth. Most teachers skip Isaiah. Chapter 41 verse 10 does not promise that your problem will disappear. I know that is not what you wanted to hear, but I would rather tell you the truth now than let you build your faith on a foundation that will crack the first time life does not go the way you expected. This verse does not promise that the diagnosis will come back clear. It does not promise that the relationship will be restored. It does not promise that the financial pressure will lift, that the person who hurt you will apologize, that the door you have been knocking on will finally open. It does not promise that you will understand what God is doing or that the path ahead will suddenly make sense. And here is why that matters. Because when people read this verse as a guarantee that everything will work out the way they are hoping, they set themselves up for a crisis of faith the moment reality does not cooperate. They feel as if God broke his word, as if the promise failed, as if they did something wrong or believed incorrectly or were somehow disqualified from receiving what he offered. But God never made that promise. And the sooner you see what he actually promised, the more solid your footing becomes. What God promises in this verse is not the removal of the storm. He promises his presence inside it. He does not promise to clear the path. He promises to be the ground beneath your feet while you walk the path as it is. He does not promise that you will not shake. He promises that what is holding you will not. There is a difference between a God who fixes everything immediately and a God who stays with you through everything completely. And the God of Isaiah, chapter 41, is the second kind. Not because he cannot fix things, but because he knows that what you need more than a solution is an anchor, something that holds when nothing else does, someone who remains when everything else shifts. This kind of honesty is not meant to discourage you. It is meant to free you. Because when you stop demanding that God perform according to your expectations, you become available to receive what he is actually offering. And what he is actually offering is infinitely more durable than the outcomes you have been praying for. Now that you know what this promise truly means, the question becomes practical. What do you actually do with it? How does a verse written thousands of years ago become something you can stand on today, in your specific situation, with your specific fear, in your specific life? That is exactly where we are going next. 3 decisions you can make today based on this verse. Everything we have covered in this video means nothing if it stays inside your head. Truth that is only understood but never applied is just information. And God did not give you this promise so you could admire it. He gave it to you so you could live from it. So here are 3 decisions you can make today. Not someday, not when things calm down, but today, that will begin to make this verse real in your actual life. The first decision is to name your fear out loud and speak this promise directly over it by name. Not in general terms, not a vague declaration that God is good and things will work out. Get specific. Say the name of the thing that is keeping you up at night. Say it out loud. And then speak Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10 over that specific thing by name. I will not fear this diagnosis because you are with me. I will not fear this financial situation because you are my God. I will not fear this uncertainty because you are holding me right now. The reason specificity matters is that fear is always specific. It has a face and a name and a scenario attached to it, and a promise spoken in general terms over a specific fear rarely lands with the force it needs to. Name the fear, name the promise. Bring them into direct contact with each other. The second decision is to reposition your identity. Right now in this moment, you may be seeing yourself as someone trying to survive, someone hanging on, someone just barely making it through. And I want to invite you to make a decision to see yourself differently, not as someone fighting to stay above water, but as someone who is actively being held above it. The difference between those 2 pictures is not cosmetic. It changes your posture. It changes your prayers. It changes what you believe is possible. You are not clinging to a promise. The promise is clinging to you. The third decision is to create a physical anchor that reconnects your body to this truth every single day. Your mind is not the only thing that needs to be reminded. Your body carries anxiety too, and a simple, repeated physical practice can become a powerful signal to your entire nervous system that you are choosing trust over fear. Open your hands when you wake up in the morning, not as a performance, as a declaration. Hands open means I am not gripping, I am not controlling, I am receiving. Or take 60 seconds before any significant decision today and simply sit in silence with this verse in your mind before you respond to anything. These are not religious rituals, they are anchors. And anchors do not stop storms. They keep you from drifting while the storm passes. These 3 decisions will not solve everything, but they will begin to build something inside you that no circumstance can take away. A practiced, daily embodied trust in a God who has already declared that He is holding you. And now I want to do something with you that I rarely do in a video like this. Something that I believe is the most important moment in everything we have shared today. Because there is a point where words about a promise have to give way to actually receiving it. And that moment is right now. Praying this promise back to God. What I want to do right now is guide you through a prayer. Not a rehearsed religious performance, not a formula, a conversation. An honest, specific, unhurried conversation with the God who just spent the last 20 minutes reminding you that He is yours and you are His. If you are somewhere you can close your eyes, close them. If not, that is fine. God hears you regardless of your posture. What matters is not the position of your body, it is the position of your heart. Speak these words as your own and mean them. God, I come to you not because I have it together, but because I do not. I come to you with the fear I have been carrying, the one I named, the one that has been louder than your voice in my life recently. I am choosing right now to bring it to you instead of carrying it alone. You said you are with me, and I receive that. You said you are my God, and I receive that. You said you will strengthen me, surround me, and uphold me. And I receive that too, not because I feel it yet, but because you said it, and you have never broken a word you spoke. Hold me where I cannot hold myself. Be the ground beneath my feet in this. I trust you. Amen. That prayer just changed something. Maybe you felt it. Maybe you did not feel anything at all. But feelings are not the measure of what just happened. You just brought your fear into contact with the living God. And nothing that enters his presence leaves unchanged. This verse found you, not the other way around. At the very beginning of this video, I asked you a question. What if the thing you are most afraid of right now is actually the doorway to the deepest encounter with God you have ever had? I want to answer that question now. With everything we have uncovered together, the fear you walked in here with today was not an accident. The anxiety that has been sitting on your chest, the uncertainty that has been following you into every room, the thing you cannot stop thinking about at 2 in the morning, none of it brought you here by chance. Because God, the same God who spoke through Isaiah to a people who had already lost everything, the same God who chose words in Hebrew that mean seized and surrounded and upheld, the same God who declared himself not just a God but your God, that same God knew you would be here today. He knew what you were carrying, and he made sure this message was waiting for you. You did not find this video today. This promise found you, and here is what I want you to leave with. Not a summary, not a list of things to remember. One truth. One sentence that I want you to carry out of this place and into whatever comes next. You are not being held by a promise you have to maintain. You are being held by a God who cannot fail. That means on the days you believe this deeply, he is holding you. On the days you doubt everything, he is holding you. On the days you are strong, he is holding you. On the days you are the worm of Isaiah chapter 41, too small and too tired and too broken to offer anything at all, he is holding you then most of all. The righteous right hand of God is not a poetic image. It is a present reality. Right now, in your life, in your situation, in the middle of the thing that brought you here today, go carry that. And when the fear comes back, because it will, come back to this verse. Come back to these words. Come back to the God who wrote your name into a promise before you were born and has been waiting for you to receive it ever since. May you walk out of this knowing that you are not alone, you are not forgotten, and you are not being left to face this by yourself. The God of heaven has claimed you, and what he claims, he keeps. If this message reached something real inside you today, save this video. Not just for yourself, but for the moment someone you love needs to hear it. Leave a comment below with the one fear you are handing to God today. Not because it makes it official, but because naming it in a place where others can see it is an act of courage that God honors. And if you want to go deeper into the promises of God that most people never fully explore, the next video is already waiting for you. What you discover there will take everything you received today even further. God bless you, and thank you for being here.